Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Life Mastery TV. My name is David McLeod. I'm coming to you from Belmont, California, and my co-host and buddy Tommy Stoffel has a guest in his special studio. So I'm gonna just say good morning, Tommy, and welcome, and please invite your guest in.
Hey, David, thanks so much, and hello everybody out there in TV land. Yeah, we're here in the level-headed room, and I have a very special friend and a special guest and a partner in crime with me, Marjan Motashami. Marjan, welcome to today's show.
Tom.
Hey there.
Yeah, with that introduction, partner in crime, I just felt like I had to hug you. Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about wisdom. And a lot of times the things we do talk about here on Life Mastery TV have to do with wisdom, have to do with our inner wisdom and how to bring it into our life. And today specifically, we're going to put my dentures back up in my mouth and we're going to talk about wisdom at work. And you may go, what? Wisdom at work? Who has that? Well, the three of us actually are parts of different things, efforts to actually bring wisdom to the workplace. And we're going to talk about that today and how important that is. So it's reaching into all aspects of our life, the concept of wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that comes up for me right away is the word wisdom itself. I mean, what does that really mean? I know that, obviously each of us has our own idea of what that means, but I think first, before we even talk about the workplace, we should talk a little bit about what we mean by that word. And I don't know about you, Tommy, but for me, wisdom is kind of, it is knowledge for sure, but it's something that comes from a different place than just logic or sequential thinking or book learning or something like that. It's something that comes from deep within us. That's been my experience anyway. And what do you think? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll give my little 2 cents and then I'll ask Marjan for her dollar's worth. Wisdom to me, I can recognize wisdom in like sometimes I'm in a session, I'm listening to a teacher, I'm listening to a wise teacher, somebody who's, a guru or giving me some insight. And I had this feeling in myself, like, I know I haven't learned that, in my life. I haven't heard this concept before, but I just know it's true. I just know it. Mm-hmm. It's in us. So that means and that's what I mean. That's to me where a good indication that I'm hearing something wise that is deeper, like you said, than the head knowing, deeper than the stuff they taught us in schools. And I believe because I recognize it, that it's already in me. And it's just kind of being awakened sometimes.
Yeah, Tom. And, I call wisdom Wi-Fi knowledge.
Wi-Fi knowledge.
Wi-Fi knowledge. I just came up with it just a second ago as we were talking about it. Because, it is knowledge that we get not through our 5 senses. It's knowledge that we get through other sources. It's knowledge that we get through our emotional intelligence, through connecting with our surrounding, through connecting with people around us, with our environment, and being cohesive and coherent with it. So that's why I call it Wi-Fi knowledge. I don't know how it sounds, but
let's go with it. David?
Oh, I like that Wi-Fi knowledge. Yeah, I mean, it does. It just kind of comes in from some outside place. We are connected, on a very, very deep level and on a universal level. So the idea of connecting by something that doesn't seem physical actually makes a lot of sense to me. And so I really like that. That's a great phrase, Wi-Fi knowledge.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it. You just came through that same source to me.
Exactly.
Evidence of wisdom just comes in from who knows where.
Yeah.
Well, and Tommy, you were talking about as you're listening to somebody else speaking and how you just kind of get a sense. You have this gut instinct or this feeling in your body that it's just true. It just makes sense. And I like to think of that particular experience as the ring of truth, and maybe that's where that term came from. It kind of resonates on a very deep level. And, you just know this is exactly right for me. This is something that I need to follow on. This is what I need to live according to this idea. So I really like that. So we've got the ring of truth from the Wi-Fi knowledge. Awesome.
Yeah.
And we're only 3 minutes in.
But you got to make sure your receiver is good and working.
Well, let's talk about that a bit, right?
Yeah.
Marjan mentioned emotional intelligence earlier, and some phrases that are going around there are mindfulness, being mindful. When I know for myself personally, back in my days of noisy head, chatterbox head, when there was a lot of churn going on in my mind and in my emotions, I didn't have the space to pick up on that wisdom. I didn't have a space to actually tap into it either.
Right.
So I did have to go through some work to make the space, to clear some room in the house, so then I could be able to receive that wisdom. When I ask a question of the universe, when I ask for some guidance, now I know it's going to come to me, and I know I can hear it or feel it or sense it. So there's clearing of the head, right?
That is very true. And since your topic today is around wisdom at work, work is actually one of those very chattery box that we all work in. Work, sometimes I compare it to, like, it can be very bipolar or schizophrenic, because you go to this environment that you have to play many different roles, and one day you're happy and jolly because you did something good, the other day you made a mistake and you feel miserable. So, and there is competition going on, there is survival instinct going on. So you can only imagine how chattery that work environment is to receive the wisdom. And so far what we've had is labor law, HR rules, very little kind of old-fashioned governance to manage this chattery boss. And now here we're coming and saying, wisdom at work? Give me a break.
Well, that's a real interesting perspective. And what you were talking about, some of those, like the HR rules, and this, governance rules and all this, those are ways of kind of trying to fit us back into that box, and part of the problem of being in the box is that, as you say, the box gets kind of messy because we're stuck in the box all the time, and it's pretty hard to clean out the box when we're in it. So sometimes we have to step out before we can see the mess that we're making. And that is a really important point. So how can I get my modem working so that my Wi-Fi connection's going to work when my modem is stuck in the back room underneath a pile of boxes and it's just loaded with dust and dirt and all kinds of corruption? I have to keep the modem out in the open. I have to keep my heart out in the open. I have to keep my mind clear and my body as clear as possible so that the receptor, as you say, is able to receive this wisdom.
So true. And I'm gonna parlay on the box idea, because, and this is gonna help. This is gonna help you separate or kind of rise above that chatterbox. So I think about this box sometimes, and I think about those of us who work in a cubicle even. And it's kind of like we're in this 8x5 box, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week for 40 years of our life. And just to recognize that first, like we do, David, we bring things to awareness. Yeah. Okay. So now I'm not in that box my entire life. That box used to be my life, and people who associate their self-worth and their value with work. They identify themselves with their work. And I used to be like that. So my life was that box, and I was in it. I didn't know I was in it. But once I realized I was in it, then I was no longer in it, because I kind of stepped away from it. Now I see that box, and I still drive to the box, and the building looks like a box. And I walk into the office, which is walled, and it's a box. There's a ceiling, and there's a floor, and there's walls around it. It's a box. And then I go sit in my little 8x5 box in that box, and I work on this computer box. So I do that every day still, but I'm not in it. I'm not stuck in it.
Yeah. It's a lot of boxing, wouldn't you say?
It's a lot of boxing, and I'm living out here, and I put myself intentionally in that box for a period of time every day, and I know it. So that just brought a lot of freedom to myself when I changed that perspective.
Yeah, because you're aware of it, because you are aware that you are in the box.
Yeah.
And so it's like, again, at work environment, one of the things that you and I have been kind of focused in our sessions is to bring awareness. Like, when you are sitting in a meeting and somebody says something and all of a sudden you start feeling like becoming aware that, okay, now I'm so attached to my opinion. I'm now so attached to being right. I'm so attached to prove myself. If you're not aware of that, you get caught in it. You get caught right in the middle of it. But when you become aware, oh, okay, that's what's happening to me. So let me just reset and get out of the box and look at it from outside.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Marja. And I think that, you know, Tommy and I talk about this all the time. The first step in any process is always awareness. You know, you can't do anything until you know what's going on. So, you know, and I love this idea. And as soon as I become aware of what's going on, it's almost as if I have physically stepped out. You know, it's just a metaphorical shift for sure. Or maybe it's an energetic shift of some kind. But the moment I become aware, I can feel that movement so that I'm like back here somewhere just watching the situation. And I have a far less attachment to any particular outcome. I'm not, when I'm in that place of being the observer, I don't feel the judgmentalism that, you know, generally I feel when I'm caught in the relationship or in whatever is going on. So there's a really huge benefit to just taking that pause. Stop, you know, stop. Now drop in, become aware, find out what's going on. And in that moment, you're kind of back in the background now, you know, and you can just, from that place, you have much more power to do whatever it is you want to do. And that's true wisdom right there.
There was that reminded me that stepping out and back reminded me of a story I heard. So we'll get more into this in a minute, that Marja and I are going to Wisdom 2.0 today. Last year's Wisdom 2.0 event, there was a guy there named Jim Ryan, and he's a congressman from Ohio. And he's in Congress, and he is practicing mindfulness. And he was on the stage, and somebody asked him, my friend was there, and somebody asked him, so what benefit is this mindfulness bringing to you as a congressman in the US Congress, in the US government? And he goes, well, I used to sit there in a room, you know, the subcommittee and the panel, and everybody was saying their stuff and fighting their fights, and, you know, it was very nasty, and you get all agitated and you get all caught in it. He goes, now I go to the same meeting with the same idiots, and I don't get caught in it. And I just observe what's going on, and then I can logically and clearly and simply express my opinion without being pulled into the drama. That is a huge benefit of wisdom, of what we're talking about.
And exactly like what you guys are saying, not only you observe it, but since the name of your show is Mastery, you get to recycle it. You actually get to turn it around and turn it into something positive, you know, by becoming aware. You can be sitting in a room and with all these chattery boxes going on, and you can be the one that actually going to turn around that negative energy to something positive. I've seen you doing it at work, Tom. So it's that's what wisdom is.
Well, I like that. That is a nice definition, or maybe it's not a definition, but it's a characteristic of wisdom. The ability to take something that maybe I don't like so much and turn it around into something that actually serves me. And that takes a certain amount of, first it takes the awareness. You know, I mean, we have to be aware that I'm attached. I have to be aware that I'm attached to some kind of particular outcome in the first place. And when I can become aware of that attachment, I can say, well, is it important for that outcome to happen? Or can I let that go and see maybe there's something bigger and better that could show up? You know, that's the beauty of wisdom that we don't even necessarily think about. And so when we're bringing this into a work environment, what we're really doing is finding a way of honoring all of our, well, honoring ourselves first, but also honoring our colleagues and our co-workers so that we can help them to see what they're doing without necessarily, you know, kind of sticking their face in it. We can just simply, you know, bring our awareness to it. And I've seen many people who do this. It really is a beautiful gift when you can practice that and just learn it and say, well, this is what I'm noticing. Maybe if we tried this, that could help us get past this stalemate or whatever. I think this is what we're talking about here.
Yes, the big question of how. How do we do it in action? How do we show it in a real scenario, in a case by case at work, so people can actually see how it works? How do you show that, you know, for example, information hoarding doesn't bring job security.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are like, you know, these are like, you got to show it to people. How do you fight this myth out there that being vulnerable, compassionate doesn't mean that you get stepped over? I mean, it takes a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of good books and seminars and conversations around, you know, what wisdom is, but the question of how is the big one, and also showing it to the business, the value add. That's the other piece. That's a whole different discussion about the value add.
And last year, Marjan and I spent the year at our company, one of the biggest banks in the United States, which I can't name, but we scheduled and we co-created a half-hour session each week. We called it Life Works, and it was a life-work balance was the premise of the training, but it was all based in mindfulness and emotional intelligence and basic wisdom teachings. And we had fun creating it. We were just creating it out of our own, you know, depths and out of the wisdom of the world. But we would cover topics like how to deal with difficult people. So here's a situation, for an example, at work, right, where you have somebody and you're feeling like you're being oppressed, or, you know, to a degree you're feeling bullied. Well, the person who's doing the bullying aside, right, that's a situation we can spend a whole nother episode talking about. You're under the pressure of it. You got a box mentality person who's kind of trying to squish you back into the box, as you said earlier, David.
Mm-hmm.
And becoming aware of it. So we trained people. We had a 3-part series on how to recognize when you're being bullied, how to become aware of it, and we pointed out actual triggers and actual
how does it feel?
How does it feel? Yeah. And then we had some people on the call who were texting us afterwards and saying, "Oh my gosh, I just needed that so bad right now because I feel like this is happening to me." And so we helped them become aware, just real matter of fact. This is stuff that happens at work. We get bullied sometimes. We get overwhelmed with tasks. So we had a session on how to organize your day and how to, you know, we've done to-do list stuff before. Mm-hmm. So there is definitely the how. You can bring very practical applications to the workplace as you can into your regular life.
Yes, I remember. I particularly liked that session we did on energy zapper.
Right? Yeah, energy zappers we call it.
Energy zapper. Yeah. What are the things that zaps your energy at work? And that brought a lot of good feedback and attention from people too, and a lot of aha moments that, oh, okay, that's how I lose my energy.
Yeah, that's why I go home feeling like Crowder. That's why I hate going to work in the morning.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, you break it down to the why, and you give them the how to get out of it, how to become aware of it, how to change their perspective. It's what you and I have been doing for 2 years now, David, at a very interpersonal level.
Good.
And we just step it up a notch into more of a team work environment situation. That's what Marjan and I have been working on. And David, I know you've been teaching some stuff in your workplace too, right?
Yeah. I created a workshop that I called Grow. And Grow it didn't have a particular name. I've had fun with bacronymizing it, but really it was about helping people to learn more powerful communication skills that would help them, you know, improve relationships with coworkers. It's not just about communication. It was also about being personally empowered. That is to say, not allowing myself to be intimidated by someone else. Not necessarily raising my power so much that I turn around and intimidate them, but just standing in my authentic power while dealing with somebody. And it could be that I'm absolutely silent. I don't have to say a single word. I can just simply listen to what the other person is saying, and I can just simply stay grounded in who I really am as a human being. And there's something magical that happens there that you know, when I was teaching this, I didn't really fully understand it. But as I watched people practicing this, and I could see shifts in their body energy, and I could see that everyone, including the person who was coming at the person who was just standing in personal power, could feel a whole shift in the way they started showing up. It is very, very powerful. And I love doing stuff like that. I love encouraging people to be full, completely resourceful, magnificent human beings. That's what I think is important. And you know, it doesn't matter whether they're in their personal life or they're at work. They just show up the same way, no matter where they are, and it has a big difference. So that's kind of where I come from. I think that you were talking about some of the how. And I think ultimately it boils down to well, two things, let's say. One is self-love. I have to have enough respect and love for myself that I am willing to stand up and just be who I am and not to compromise that in any way. Secondly, I have to extend that same love out to others. In other words, give them permission in my own mind, even if I never actually say the words, give them permission to be fully who they are in my presence. That's really what we're talking about here. And this has to happen everywhere in our life, not just at work. But I think, what we're trying to do today is we're focusing on bringing that kind of energy into our work environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And connecting all that you said, David, to a value proposition for corporations so that they understand bringing compassion to work has a direct correlation with your employees being more cohesive, making better decisions, things like that. I mean, it's out there. People understand that, but you gotta be able to kind of marry it into a business proposition so that it doesn't. So we're not just talking wisdom here outside of work, but it becomes a necessary part of like HR or trainings, and not just limited to the leadership training, but everybody.
Yeah.
Becomes a necessary tool for workplace.
Yeah, it has to become part of the corporate culture, and that's this Wisdom 2.0 that we're going to that's this weekend was started just for that reason. It was started by the Googles and the LinkedIns and the Yahoos and the Twitters, and they've been joined by a lot of other major corporations right now who are using mindfulness practices and then making that part of their corporate culture. And because they recognize the value in it, they recognize the value in attracting good talent now and retaining that talent as well.
Yeah.
And it's become a major fundamental core of their corporations and their cultures, to the point that they've reached out to other corporations and put together this Wisdom 2.0 event that's been going on for 5 years now to help spread this throughout the corporate world. And let's keep hoping that it keeps growing and growing, right?
Yes. So like cell phone becomes a necessary tool.
There you go. Wisdom Wi-Fi.
Actually, the whole idea of this, of bringing this into corporations, it really actually gives me hope for the future, because a lot of corporations up until recent years have been, shall we say, unconscious citizens and maybe not quite so beneficial to our society. And so bringing this kind of awareness into a corporation means that they're raising the bar, and they're really starting to think about their impact on the world. And maybe this whole notion of psychopathy and everything else that's been happening in our corporations and the greed that they've been practicing for so many years, maybe we're finally starting to make a dent in that and starting to realize that just doesn't work. We got to look at our world and we got to change something. I mean, if we say we want to go there, we better stop heading in that direction. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's all thing about being the change we wish to see in the world. And look, you're a prime example of it. You're in a company, Marjan and I are a prime example of it. We're in a company that's based in the financial industry, and could be claimed to be, in that world of greed. But yet we're human beings. I work in that company. I'm a part of that company. And I'm a human being, and I'm a conscious, aware human being. Right. And so to be able to bring that consciousness and that awareness and this emotional intelligence and this wisdom and this presence into that company, some people are like hungry for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we had like 20% participation out of a cold list of 100 people. We'd have 20 people regularly attending our sessions, which is a huge amount. Mm-hmm. Take people out of their work, busy work schedule, to set aside a half hour and to come listen to a couple nuts talk.
Yeah. And you talked about change, like corporations deal with change, reorgs and restructures that happens all the time, big or small. And imagine how much easier it would be for a corporation to have the culture of people embrace change. Because, no matter how much, we talk about change, embrace change, all that talk. How do you embrace change? How do you internally, how do you make the change? How do you take the change? That was one of the sessions that we did. that's when the corporations see the value add from that kind of culture that helps the employee actually embrace change, then they see the connection between their goal and the human individual goals. It's not separate.
I'm gonna try to express this because it just came to me in listening to both of you talk, right, and about the box mentality. Look, the corporate structure is a box mentality structure. That's the way it was designed 200,000-300,000 years ago, whenever it was, first structured. It's very structured and it's very, controlling and controlled. But we're coming in as this wave of people who are becoming more aware, more conscious. We're breaking out of the box, and we're not going to get stuffed back in it. And it's going to become clear in the corporate companies. The ones who are already seeing it are doing it because they realize it's clear that it's to their benefit to not be so boxed and not be so restrictive and not be, keep people afraid of making mistakes or afraid of change or afraid of speaking, out of turn. Those are all conditions of the box mentality. And like you said, I'm a much more happier, productive employee when I know I'm just coming in to do my job, and I'm not going to get all emotionally entranced, and I'm not going to get bullied, and I'm not going to get beat up. And when there is change, I know how to embrace it because I was taught by Marjan and Tommy and LifeWorks, Matt, TV. So, right? So the light bulbs are going to keep going on, David, and you're seeing it, and be encouraged because it's encouraging and it's working.
Yeah. Well, so let's ask this one question. I mean, before we're getting close to the end here. What is maybe one step that people could take right now to help increase the level of wisdom at the companies they work at right now? What one thing could people do aside from, their own work, which of course we all have to do? What's one step do you think that they could do? Suggestions?
When they get one of those employee engagement surveys, ask for it. Ask. That's the thing. Ask for this type of
ask for mindfulness training of some degree
and all that. Yeah, ask for it. As you always talk about, do the ask first and be open to what comes in, and help your employer, your boss, your HR see the movement or what is going on around us. Use company examples to get your point across. Educate your boss about it.
Yep. I was talking to my boss's boss yesterday, and he invited me in for a session, one-on-one, and I told him I was going to Wisdom 2.0 this weekend, and he was interested in that. And then I told him Pete Carroll was going to be there, the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. And he goes, "Oh my God, that's my favorite guy. He's going to be there on stage." And I was like, yeah. So just that kind of thing, right? And you keep hearing these names like the Googles and the LinkedIns and the Yahoos, the big companies that are making an impact on the world in a good way are embracing this culture change. To answer your question, David, when you ask me what one thing can we do, asking for it, totally agree with Marjan. Another thing, at the beginning of the list, one of the first things we taught was we were teaching people how to listen better. Mm-hmm. And that's always been a kind of basic core training thing, but bringing that listening aspect encompasses a lot of the stuff we talked about in the last 25 minutes of pausing, listening to other people. You're calming down the chatter, you're bringing down the energy if you're not constantly trying to talk and think and say something.
Yep. Uh-huh.
And you have to really be still and present and calm to listen well. So if there's one thing that I would teach somebody to start with is listen better.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I think that listening is the single, if all of us had only one skill to learn, that would be the one. But I think the second and almost as important skill is learning how to speak to be understood. I think these are two extremely important skills, and we have to practice them. And these are two skills that I teach in my Grow workshop, and I'm looking forward to having more opportunities to do that. But I agree with you. I think if we can just pause, and maybe the word listen kind of has its own implication about waiting for words to be said, but I think of it more as being present and being aware. And so that is to say, I'm listening not only to the words, but I'm also listening to the the movement of the body. I'm watching, I'm observing, and I'm taking all of that in and kind of synthesizing it into a communication within myself. So I understand better where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think Stephen Covey says it nicely in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Yeah. So that's your one and two right there, David. Seek first to understand.
I didn't realize I was that brilliant.
You are. There you have it. So
all right. So you guys are going to be going to this conference, and you're driving up from where you are now up to San Francisco this weekend. Is that right?
We are.
Okay. And that conference runs from when to when?
It's signing is tonight. Tomorrow there's a bunch of they're doing it interesting. Tomorrow there's a bunch of breakout sessions, some of which include yoga classes, some of which include, I'm sure, workshops. And then Sunday and Monday are the stage talks. So that's where the people like the Seattle Mariner head coach is going to be on stage and talking to us about how they're really bringing wisdom into their workplace. I mean, Pete Carroll gave whole 100% credit to the success of the Seattle Seahawks over the last 3 years. They got really close to Super Bowl a couple times, to his mindfulness practices that he teach his players. So it's working, yeah. So I'm gonna selflessly self promote here. This is Marjan and I are going to the company with this in our pocket. This is our company, our banner, bringing wisdom to work. wisdomtowork.com.
Awesome.
So there you go.
Good job.
Yeah.
Is that a Moo card by any chance?
Is that a what card?
A Moo card?
A Moo card?
Or is it just a regular business card?
It's a pretty thick business card. Like I could poke an eye out with it. It's pretty sturdy. But
well, I don't want my eye poked out, but thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much, Marjan, for joining us today. I hope you guys have a great time at the conference. I wish I'd known about it sooner. I would have probably registered for that thing. But next year, can always do it next year.
Yep.
Meanwhile, next week, Tommy is going to be away doing some jeeping or some amazing thing like that. And I'm going to be on the show with my good friend Beata Lewis, and we're going to be talking about shadow dynamics. And it's going to be a really interesting show. We're going to be having some fun looking at how our shadows interact with one another and how that may impact the way we show up in our lives and maybe how we show up at work. You know, this is something that just happens. So join us next week. Shadow dance. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.